Oscar was born in the US, a former US territory called the Philippines. He speaks 3 languages, English, Spanish, and the native Filipino language, Tagalog. He's a funny guy, and he likes to admit that his Spanish is not too great. He wants the world to know that. I don't know why. Every time he speaks to me, he speaks in Spanish, and I feel his Spanish is amazing. I appreciate how he puts a lot of effort into being amazing and great and excellent in everything he sets out to do. Oscar is an electrical engineer by profession. He graduated from Virginia Tech, where he met his wonderful wife. He's been married for 44 years, and he has 2 wonderful sons. So today, we're going to be seeing Oscar in his element of Toastmasters. And for those of you wondering how he came to Toastmasters, I said he was a funny guy, right? He came to Toastmasters because of pizza. Just that, you see a flyer, they're offering pizza, whatever that is, I don't care. I'm going to go get that slice of pizza. So he went to an open house and he liked it. He felt welcome. He enjoyed the environment. And since then, he has been helping out clubs, helping out District 18, and he has done amazing things. He has been a club president, an area director, division director, club growth director, program quality director, and if that's just not enough, district director as well. So everyone, please help me welcome Oscar Zalamia with a great round of applause. And Oscar, the floor is yours.
Hello, Toastmasters. How's everybody doing this morning or this evening, wherever you are? Awesome. You see the designation on my near my name, next to my name, DTM. What does that mean? It doesn't mean do not time me. I want to be timed. So let me confirm that my presentation today is up to 1 hour, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, the appraisal I want to hear today is I learned something from Oscar. That's what I want to hear as my appraisal today. I don't want to hear accolades. I don't want to hear he's the best. I just want to hear I learned something. Are we good? All right. Let's get started. This is the Toastmasters contest judges training that I'll be presenting, that I put together for you. What is the purpose of speech contests? Number 1, it's an opportunity for experienced speakers to compete at a high level. Has anyone here competed at a contest? All right, some of you have. So you've experienced the excitement of participating in a contest. The other purpose of a speech contest is an opportunity for everyone to learn by observing proficient speakers. In a contest, there are many roles, but these are the main functionaries or roles that are involved in a contest. There's a contest chair or a contest master. There are contestants. They're actually the most important part, the contestants. There are timers, 2 timers, ballot counters, normally around 3 ballot counters, a chief judge, a tie-breaking judge, and then you, the judges. Hopefully, you will be serving as a judge in the very near future. We have an obligation as judges to the contestants. Contestants expect fairness and impartiality and deserve quality judging. We have an obligation to Toastmasters International. Our obligation is to maintain Toastmasters International's reputation for excellence. We have an obligation to the audience. The audience deserves a good speech contest. And we have an obligation to ourselves. Our obligation is for us to improve ourselves. We owe it to ourselves to do our best. Now let's start with eligibility. To be a judge, to be a tie-breaking judge, to be a chief judge at a speech contest, you have to meet some eligibility requirements. As a in a contest, you have to be a paid member. That means you paid your dues for a minimum of 6 months. Secondly, you must have completed your level 1, at least be a level 1 pathways. You've completed your pathways level 1. I'm sorry, not level 1, but level 2. That's the requirement.
Correct.
Now I'm going to go over the qualities of a good judge. Let me ask you this question. What's your job as a judge? It's simple and straightforward. Your only job as a judge is to pick a winner. Fair and square, pick a winner. There's a difference between judging versus evaluating. In a club meeting, you give evaluations, right? Evaluating is appraising the speech, measuring the speaker's performance to the speech objective, and providing feedback and suggestions for improvement. In a contest, you don't do that. You don't evaluate, although it seems the same, but it's not. In a contest, judging simply means picking a winner, the best performer in a contest. You don't owe the contestants an evaluation. As a matter of fact, you're not allowed to give an evaluation. If the contestant asks you at the end of the contest, well, how did I do? How did you score me? You're not allowed to do that. You don't owe the contestants an evaluation. All you need to do is score and give them a rating. How did they do according to the contest criteria or to the judging criteria, which I'll cover in a little bit. So remember, judging is not the same as evaluating. Also, in a contest, when you're judging, avoid being subjective. That means judging based on personal feelings and emotions. Rather than being subjective, be objective. Judging should be based on strict rules and criteria. And again, I will clarify all of this in a little bit. The qualities of a good judge are being trustworthy. Good judges realize the contestants, the contest officials, and the audience have entrusted them with the responsibility of selecting the best speaker as the winner. So a lot of power has been given to you. Live up to that trust. Unfortunately, there have been cases in the past where judges have marked down a better speaker so a favored speaker could place. That's not good. A good judge would not consider such a thing. So therefore, be trustworthy. Also, be accurate. A good judge is dedicated to making a well thought out decision. They complete the appropriate judging scoring form correctly and total their points accurately. So check your math when you add up your scores. A good judge is fair. They are impartial. Judges do not let friendship, affiliation, age, sex, race, creed, national origin, profession, or disapproval of the speech topic interfere with your decision making. Be fair. A good judge is knowledgeable. Good judges know the contest rules. They have reviewed the current rule book, speech rule book, before each contest, and they make no exceptions to the rules, except under extraordinary circumstances as directed by the chief judge. Good judges are familiar with the judging forms and understand the potential barriers to being objective. And finally, good judges are also good listeners. They listen to each speaker independently. They do not daydream or become distracted. Now, I'm going to go over the biases or the barriers to objectivity. These are very important. As humans, we have unconscious biases, and we must be cognizant of those biases and avoid letting our biases influence our decision making when we judge. The first bias is the influence of being the first or last speaker. This is unconscious. We normally pay more attention to the first speaker or to the last speaker. Let's pay attention to all the speakers equally. Let's not use the first speaker as a baseline for judging other speakers. Treat each speaker the same. Listen to each speech with the same energy, with the same enthusiasm, with the same attention. The next bias is favoring the underdog or giving somebody else a chance, giving the handicap credit. We don't do that. There are no handicap points in a contest. Everyone gets the same treatment. So don't let feelings influence your judging. You've heard of the halo effect. Resist giving speakers high marks for anything but good performance. Maybe they did well with voice and vocal variety, but not too well in the content or in the language. But because they had a good voice or good vocal variety, we give them high marks in all categories. That's the halo effect. At the same time, avoid the opposite of the halo effect. Don't downgrade a speaker in one category because of bad performance in another category. So remember that. Avoid the halo effect. Avoid the opposite of the halo effect. Having heard the speech before, the perception of the speaker from the past performance, maybe 6 months ago you heard the speech and it wasn't too well. Don't judge this speech based on past performance. Judge the speaker as if you've heard it the first time. Never consider past successes or past failures. Judge them based on their merit of their performance today. We have social norms in Toastmasters. We shake hands and we go up on stage, but sometimes in other cultures, they may not want to shake hands. So don't let culture or norms, their social norms, influence your judging. Determine whether the norms in your club should be applied universally. Sometimes clubs do things a little differently. Maybe they don't want to shake hands. So don't let that affect your judging. Political beliefs and prejudices. Set aside likes and dislikes because you don't agree with the speaker's political beliefs. Judge only on relevant criteria that's in your judging guide. And know the rules. Be familiar with the rules. Enforce the rules as well. Comply with the ground rules. That means you have to remain anonymous during a virtual contest, make sure there are no photos during the contest, and the sergeant at arms closes or locks the door when the contestants are speaking. And if you're announcing the results, make sure you announce the results correctly. Remember Miss Universe a couple years ago? Miss Colombia was announced as the winner. That was a big mistake. It should have been Miss Philippines. A little humor. This is also important. Remember when I said earlier, you don't owe the contestants an evaluation. If they ask you, how did you score me? You're not supposed to divulge that information. Keep the judging information in a contest confidential, strictly confidential. Do not reveal the scores. At the end of the contest, make sure you get rid of that information. If you have the form and the score sheets, make sure you destroy them so that no one can see it. This is essential. This is crucial in a contest. Keeping the information confidential. And in your score sheet, if you happen to end up with a tie, make sure you cut that tie, you break that tie. There are no ties in a contest. Protests. Protests are limited only to you judges and the contestants. And protests can be based on two things: eligibility and originality. If you heard this, if you notice that the speech is not substantially original, you have an obligation to raise a protest. That means you have to inform the chief judge that the speech is not original, that the contestant reference another contestant's speech. You have to bring that up because those are grounds for disqualification. And a protest must be made before the announcement of the winners. If there's a protest, the contestant will be given an opportunity to respond to the protest. The judges will then get together and vote on whether the protest has merit, or they will decide, they will come up with a verdict whether to disqualify the contestant or not. So that happens rarely, but it does happen. And finally, once the votes are read, the decision is final, and you can't change it. So if you have a protest, make sure you do it before the results are announced. Now, has everyone downloaded and printed a copy of the judge's ballot and guide? Well, I do hope that you have your judge's guide and ballot available, because we're going to be using it in part 3 of this presentation. This is what the judge's ballot and guide look like. As you can see, the top part is the scoring sheet, and the bottom part is the ballot. After you fill out the ballot, you will tear off the bottom part of the form and submit that to the chief judge or the ballot counters in an in-person contest. But in a virtual contest, I have put together an electronic ballot where all you have to do is click on the winners online. We did that last year, and I thought it worked out pretty well. But if you're competing or if you're judging in an in-person contest, you will be using this paper ballot. So I want you to be familiar with this judging ballot form. All right, now I'm going to talk about the judging criteria. Your judging form will actually show what these judging criteria form, this judging criteria information. You will be judging a contestant based on speech content, delivery, and language. And 50% of your score will be based on speech content. 30% will be based on delivery, and 20% will be based on language. This is the scoring system that we use to judge contestants in a Toastmasters contest. Now, let me break down the judging criteria a little bit further. Let's talk about speech content. Speech content consists of speech development, which is 20%. 20%, effectiveness is 15%, and speech value is 15%. If you add up those percentages, you'll end up with 50%. Now, you're probably going to ask me, what is speech development? How do I score a contestant based on speech development? Well, speech development is the structure, the organization of the speech. Did the speaker engage the audience? Did the speaker show data, examples, statistics in the speech? Was it smooth? That is speech development. Next is effectiveness. Effectiveness is how did the audience respond, reacted to the speech? So in an actual contest, you will be observing the audience as well. You will try to gauge their reaction to the contestant's speech. That is how you rate or score effectiveness. Speech value. Speech value is the content of the speech. Was it meaningful? Did it contribute to your knowledge? Was it original? And that's 15% of content of the speech. So that's the content of the speech. Now let's move on to the other portion of the scoring system. There is delivery. Delivery is includes the physical, which is the body language, the gestures. That's 10% of your score. The voice, how well they use vocal variety, that's 10%. The manner, confidence, enthusiasm, their stage presence, that's 10% of the score. And then there's language. Language includes correctness and appropriateness. Did they use proper grammar? Was their use of words appropriate? So that pretty much is how we score contestants in a contest. You have content, you have delivery, and you have language. And if you look at these percentages, they all add up to 100%. So in your form, if you look at your form carefully, the maximum score you can give to speech development is 20 points. If they didn't do too well, you might just want to give them 10 points. If they did somewhere in the middle, you might want to give them just 15 points. For effectiveness, the maximum score is 15 points. For speech value, the maximum score is 15 points. And for correctness, appropriateness, manner, voice, delivery, the maximum scores in those categories is 10 points. So I just want you to be familiar with the quantitative scoring aspect of judging. These are the way you give scores to a contestant. Now it's time to actually practice judging. So if you have your form, I want you to use your form. I want you to print your name at the bottom of the ballot. And I want you to judge two contestants that I will be presenting here today. This is a simulation of a contest. I want you to pretend we are in a contest and we're judging. There will be two contestants. I want you to put their names on the judging form where it says contestant. And I want you to actually listen to each speech and do your best to score them according to the criteria in your form: content, delivery, and language.
Bluetooth mode. Waiting for
Douglas
rhyming
Wilson.
mode.
Defining moments. Defining moments, Douglas Wilson.
That's your first contestant, Douglas Wilson.
I was high in an oak tree, sawing limbs for my dad. I was 9 years old and I was fearless. Dad was supervising the operation from the ground on the other side of the fence. Zupa, zupa, zupa. I got it, Dad. Okay, Douglas, come on down. And be careful. Sure, Dad. Crack! Have you ever noticed that life-changing events always seem to happen in slow motion? Ah! My life flashed in front of my eyes like a movie. It was a short movie. I'm only 9 years old. I caught my leg on the last branch on the tree and it slammed me against the tree. I hung there stunned. Mr. Contest Chairman. Fellow Toastmasters. Help. My dad leaped over the fence, lifted me from the branch, and held me close and tight. I thought I'd lost you. I love you, son. And I love you too, Dad. I wasn't fearless anymore. This was a defining moment. On Wednesday night, Mark Sanborn talked about defining moments. We all have them. They shape our lives, and we believe that they define who we are. When I was in high school, I entered my first speech contest. My dad had been a speech coach in college, so I asked him to coach me. Every time I'd start to give a line, he'd stop me. Say it like this. Gesture like this. I never got to give the whole speech. Dad, whose speech is this? Yours or mine? Yours. He gave me my speech and left the room. On my big day, in front of 300 people, I stood to deliver my perfect speech. Suddenly, my mind sat back down. And my audience disappeared into a black, inky void. It seemed like I stood there forever. When my vision cleared, I could see my dad. And the look of disappointment on his face. That was a defining moment. I had failed. When I went to college, I dreamed of being a pilot, just like my dad. I would get my degree, become an Air Force officer, go to pilot training. My dad was brilliant, and so was I. So brilliant that I knew I could pass those difficult college courses without attending class. Now that's a defining moment. I was kicked out of school. And I stopped believing in myself. I thought that Dad would invite me to stay at home. Oh, he invited me all right. He invited me to join the military. In the Air Force, I earned my commission as a second lieutenant. As an officer, I renewed my dream to become a jet pilot. I grew up in an airplane, so pilot training was simple at first. When we entered advanced jet training, I started to falter. And then just before an important flight exam, my instructor gave me a pink slip. Now in business, a pink slip means you're fired. Here it meant you don't measure up. My instructor told me, Douglas, I don't think you can do this. Well, he got my attention. My dream was in peril. This was a defining moment. But I was determined. I was committed to be a jet pilot. I will not be defined by his words. I will not be defined by my doubts. And I will not be defined by his pink slips. I worked even harder. I visualized flying that perfect flight. And when that flight exam arrived, it happened just the way I had imagined it in my mind hundreds of times before. Graduation day was on my dad's birthday. I was a distinguished graduate. I could see the look of pride in his eyes. This was our defining moment. These moments shape our lives. They happen in an instant when we least expect them. And they change us forever. We too often define ourselves through our failures when we should define ourselves by even our smallest successes. I have learned we can choose how we let our defining moments change our lives. Dad, will you pin on my wings? I love you, son. I love you too, Dad. Mr. Contest here.
We will now observe 1 minute of silence for you to complete your ballot for this contestant. So
Ed Hearn. Bouncing back. Bouncing back, Ed Hearn.
Mr. Contest Chair, Toastmasters, and guest, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was 8 years old and I was given the greatest gift that any child could ever want. It was an inflated punching bag. It stood about 4 feet high, and I punched it every day. I loved that gift because at that time, I believed that I could be the heavyweight champion of the world. And that was a great gift because every time I punched it, it fell to the ground. It was also a great opponent because it did not punch back. But it was also a great metaphor for life. You see, all of us in life will go through times where we will get punched in the face. Sometimes we'll get tilted and knocked off balance. At other times, we'll be punched completely to the ground. But life is only about 10% about what happens to you. The other 90% is what are you going to do about it? And what is your strategy for bouncing back? Yes, I played with that punching bag every day of my childhood. And then one day it happened. I was set upon by my arch enemy in life, my younger brother, Ricky. My spoiled younger brother, Ricky. He was the kid who was born to my mother when she was 48 years of age after she had had 10 other children, of which I was the youngest. Every argument that I had with my younger brother that involved a toy ended with my mother uttering the same words, G-I-T-T-B, give it to the baby. Ooh, that used to pierce my soul. There were times when I wanted to go up to my mother and father and say, hey guys, I know you've been married a long time, but if you had exercised some restraint later in life, I would be the baby. So on this particular day, I said, Ma, it's my punching bag. And she relented. She told my spoiled younger brother, Ricky, let him play with it, Rick. And I smiled and punched my bag. But my spoiled younger brother was not to be outdone. Later that day, while I was watching television, he did it. He took a sharp object and punctured my punching bag. He murdered it. Later, when I found my punching bag, it was nothing but a lifeless heap of plastic. And I went to Mom and I said, Mom, my bag, it's been murdered. She said, oh, it's only a bag, honey. I'll buy you another one. Throw it away. As I walked to the garbage can with my punching bag, I didn't know what was worse. The fact that my favorite toy had been murdered, the fact that my spoiled brother Ricky didn't even get in trouble for doing it. And I walked to the garbage can. As I walked, something entered my mind. As I was going to throw away the bag, I thought to myself, I wonder what it is about this bag, that every time you punch it, it bounces back. You knock it down, it bounces back. And I had a thought that perhaps the answer was inside of the bag. And so I went to the kitchen and I got a knife and I cut the bag open. And guess what I found? At the base of that bag was a weight shaped in a bowl-like shape. And it anchored it to the ground. And the symmetry and design of that bowl was such that no matter how you tilted it, it bounced right back up. And when I found it, I said, wow. And backwards, that is, wow. Well, I figured, hey, I'll throw away the bag, but I'm keeping this bowl, man. Look at this thing. I held on to it and I put my marbles in it and it became my treasured toy. And when I became a teenager, I even gave that bowl a name. I called it the Bounce Back Bowl. And I decided I was going to make money on it. I even made a commercial about it. Tilted hard, tilted light. It doesn't matter, it stands upright. The Bounce Back Bowl. I could see millions in my mind with this bowl. Oh, but then little things like patent and trademark infringement got in the way. You know what I mean? Would you believe that that bowl became as treasured to me even as the punching bag itself? Because every time I tilted it, it would tilt and come back. Tilt and come back. Would you even believe that to this very day, I still have my bounce back bowl? It sits right on my desk. And every now and then I'll punch it with my finger and watch it tilt and come back. And that bowl is still teaching me a vital lesson about life. Because friends, all of us are going to go through times where we're going to be socked in the face. The philosopher Viktor Frankl said, it's called unavoidable suffering. But it's still teaching me that life isn't so much about what happens to you. The real key to life is what in the world are you going to do about it? And most importantly, what is your strategy for bouncing back? Mr. Contest.
Okay, judges, please complete your ballots. We will announce the winner in about a minute. We will compare our selections to the actual result. All right, now here's the results.
And now, the 2006 World Champion of Public Speaking is Ed Hearn.
Well, what do you think? Did you all pick the same winner? If not, that's okay too. Just do your best to properly and fairly judge the contestants. As long as you do that, you avoid biases, you're in good shape. That's all we ask for, is do your very best to be fair and square and objective, and you will do just fine. All right, now it's time for question and answer. I think we have 14 minutes left for questions and answers.
Hi, Oscar. This is Denise. I have a question. Well, I have a couple. Number one, the time that you gave us to write down our judgment, is that real time for contests?
It's always 1 minute after each speech, but at the end, when the last contestant speaks, the judges will be given as much time as they need. It could be 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. It's up to the chief judge to signal the contest chair.
Got it. So what advice would you give to judges to focus on that 1 minute after the speech? Because usually in contest, we have like 10 contestants and it's hard to remember. So what is the most important to keep in mind after that speech, that 1 minute?
I suggest that you score or judge contestants like you're judging an Olympic event. In other words, try to complete the scoring for each contestant as they speak. So if you notice they're doing well with physical and language, go ahead and score them on the sheet. Don't wait till the beginning of the 1 minute to start scoring. Do it as in real time. When they're speaking, start scoring them. You can actually gauge or sense how well they're doing with structure, with organization, as they're speaking.
Right.
But-
So, yeah.
So I suggest don't wait until the end of the contestant speech to start scoring. Score in real time as they speak.
Right. And then we would use that 1 minute to maybe review. And
To
then
review, right?
at the end, maybe do the adding of the numbers. That makes sense?
That makes sense too. But I suggest if you can just focus on the contestant speech as they speak, and then finish giving them a score like you're an Olympic judge. Do they get a 10, a 9, an 8, whatever? Give them that score during that 1 minute, and then bold your form to cover that the scores on that contestant, and then move on to the next contestant and forget the last contestant and just focus now on the next contestant.
Thank you, Oscar.
Oscar, I had a
Stephanie?
question. Yes, thank you. Thank you for presenting today. I'm a relatively new member in Toastmasters. I joined in June this year, and this was quite enlightening for me to participate and to become a judge myself. And my question, and I'm glad you at the end of your last answer you mentioned folding over the sheet. So maybe that wouldn't bias you as you grade the next contestant. I'm assuming that's how you would at least minimize the bias.
Correct.
My question for you is, going back to the two speakers, my score for those two was very close, the final score. And I did end up giving the higher score to the winner.
Okay.
Do you know how they scored in the end? The final score at that event?
They don't reveal the actual numeric scores. They just announce third place, second place, and first place.
Okay, thank you for that. And last, just a comment. I think the ultimate winner, I think, ultimately had a topic he presented on that may just be more broadly recognized. Maybe. I think the first, who was excellent, I wasn't in the military, I wasn't in speech club, but I had siblings, rivalries, all that, and parents, of course. So I think that probably helps when you look ahead. If you're going to that level, do you want something as broadly experienced as possible? That's my thought on that. But thank you again for offering this morning.
Yes, my personal impression of the eventual winner was that he resonated more with the audience. He connected more with the audience with humor and with his story. That's my take on why he won. But each judge is different. We just do our best to make sure we select the appropriate winner.
Oscar, Claude has a question.
Sure. Go ahead, Claude.
Thank you so much, Oscar. It was very, very nice to participate to this presentation. That is great for me. I learned a lot. And as my predecessor, I also picked the winner. But during your presentation, you talk about the benchmark. I used the first as the benchmark to judge the second speaker. And what made the difference for me was the introduction.
Okay.
The introduction, and I see that the second speaker used what we were taught to use when we had a speech to present. In some point, I rated them the same. I give them the same score. Now, I have two quick questions. The first is the timing. I did not recall having seen the timing or see the timer showing that the two speakers are within the time frame or they are outside. This is the first. And the second, this is what you call the bias. I was feared that because you have a white man and a black man and I am black, I was feared that if I will avoid that bias. And if you can come in again on that, because this is the most challenging aspect of the judging job. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those questions. Let me focus first on your last question about biases. What you saw here were just two contestants. There were actually 10 contestants from all over the world. We had Muslim, we had black, white. There may have been Asian and Hispanics in there too. But in that contest, you will see different cultures. And again, we try our best not to focus on their ethnicity or their nationality. We just focus on their speech. And the other question you had was the timing. We're not responsible, or we don't take timing into account when we judge. That's not our responsibility. So whether they go under time or over time, that doesn't affect the way we judge. So don't think of the time. That's not for the judges to worry about. It's just focus on the speech. But those are great questions. I'm glad you asked them. And I like your appraisal that you learned.
Oscar, I have another question. So in the ballot, you see that we have fair, good, very good, and excellent. And there's a range of numbers. The way I was judging is that I look at those four, I look at the parameters, speech development, effectiveness, etc. And if I believe that it was fair, an example, that's ranges from 0 to 8, I just give them the 8, which is the maximum number. Is that a fair way to go about it, or are there other ways? What would you suggest?
Well, that guide or that form is just a guide. Some some judges try to just simplify the guide. They rate the contestants like a report card, the A, B, C, and D. So an A is what, 10 points, a B is probably 8, a C is 6, and a D is 5 maybe. Use your best judgment again to score the contestants, but use that equally with all the contestants. If you use one system for one, use the same system for all.
Got it. Thank you. I didn't see it like that with letters, like the ABC grading system. So thank you for that. We have a question from Karen.
Yes, I'm going to go back to the timer issue. I understand timing doesn't have anything to do with our scoring, but I'm assuming it has something to do with their qualification. So at what time, if we've scored and we've said who the winner is, but somebody went way over their time frame or maybe didn't meet it and they're disqualified, what happens to our vote?
Okay, let's say the contestant that you picked was disqualified because of time. It's up to the chief judge to disqualify that contestant because of time. Therefore, they will not be announced as they will not place at all, even though you picked them second. Let's say when the chief judge and the ballot counters gets together, they will see that, okay, the winner that these judges selected were disqualified. Let's say the final tally showed that the winner that was selected unanimously or the total score. Let's say that the winner was disqualified because of time. They will be disqualified by the chief judge, and they will not be included in the winner announcement. It's really up to the chief judge and the ballot counters to do that part. As judges,
I think it just clicked in. We're not presenting the final winner. We're just our individual choice, so that if my choice got disqualified, they're going to look at the other
that's
winner.
correct. Yes,
Okay.
madam. That's what happens. Your score is your only score. It gets tallied up with all the other scores from the other judges. But when a contestant is disqualified, the chief judge will remove that contestant from the overall tally.
Right. Thank you.
Their names will not be announced either. The contest chair will just announce there has been a disqualification due to time.
And the contestant will be made aware, but only to the contestant. Is
Only
that
to
right?
the contestant. No, the contestant will not be
Oh, the contestant will not
informed.
know.
No,
Will
the
not be
contestant will
informed.
not know. There will just be an announcement that there has been a disqualification, but the contestant will not be informed.
Oh, interesting.
The only time a contestant will be informed is if there's a protest because of originality.
Only for originality or any kind of protest?
It's normally originality and reference to another contestant's speech.
So if they got disqualified for something else, they wouldn't know.
Well,
They
those
wouldn't
are
be informed.
those are the only two grounds for disqualification. They may have
Okay.
used foul language or spoke about something controversial. Those are not grounds for disqualification. It's just the two things. Their speech wasn't substantially original. They didn't give credit to a source,
Right.
reference a source, or they reference another contestant's speech.
Got it. Do we have any more questions, comments before we close this session? Bruce?
Hello, Denise. I have a question about how to judge the ballot, because I find, referencing the other contestants is more effective, because you can find some nuances, when you're scoring. Like maybe you can just give this contestant a fair score at 8, but you find, the other contestant only a little bit maybe better or just worse than this one. You can just give 7. And if you have many contestants, actually, it's more accurate than you just, folded and don't see anything there.
Right.
Yeah. And usually what I did is I would just reference, every time I would reference all the past speakers, like how they performed in their part. And I only compare the field that they had, like a speech development or vocal variety, only this line. And after everything is done, I will just add up their scores. So I think, it's more objective. Just to me, I don't know if you have judged other contests. How do you feel about that?
In a contest where there are only 2 contestants, it's, in my opinion, quite easy to just compare the 2 contestants to each other. But in a contest where there are 10 contestants, it becomes problematic to compare each contestant to the first contestant or the last contestant. It gets too complicated. So my suggestion is compare them to the criteria in the guide, not to each other, but to the criteria, to the standard, to a benchmark, to to an ideal benchmark. That way, you don't. It becomes more straightforward to give scores, because comparing them to each other, it doesn't work too well. That's why I ask that you fold your form so that you forget about the last contestant and move on to the next one and compare them to the judging criteria that's in the form. How well did they do with speech development to the benchmark speech development? How well did they compare with the physical? So essentially, you're comparing them to a standard rather than to each other.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Oscar. Yeah, and thank you, Bruce. That was a good question. Any more comments, Claude? Were you gonna say something?
Yes. Maybe I missed something. The question is, who can disqualify a speaker, a contestant, and at what moment because in the demo I didn't see the sequence where we can see that a speaker is disqualified. So maybe I missed something in the presentation.
The chief judge makes the verdict of disqualification. Only the chief judge makes that ruling. I think I've exceeded my time. I hope you've learned something today. Again, let me end this. What's your job, judges? Do you remember what your job is?
Someone else say something.
Okay.
Pick a winner.
Yes, exactly.
Pick a winner. Pick a winner.
All right. Thank you very much for attending my judges training. It's been a pleasure. I've been working with Denise and Nicole, and they did a great job organizing this event. Kudos to Denise and Nicole.
And let's not forget Karen, our
And
VPE.
Karen, and of course, Karen.
She has been amazing. Yeah.
We
Thank you so
provided you
much.
with resources. I think Karen has given you a link to download the judge's guide and the contest rule book.
Yes, we will be sharing these to our members, buddies. Those that are not in the club roster because they're not members of Buddies, you can take it in the chat. Thank you so much, Oscar, for providing your email as well. If anyone has any questions, wants to reach out, Oscar is a passionate Toastmasters. I'm pretty sure he'll make some time to address you. And thank you everyone for participating, for making these questions. I'm so happy that now we at least have the resources, like Oscar said, to do an excellent job. Now moving forward, it's about practicing. You'll get familiar with the judge's ballot. You'll get familiar with the number system. You'll find your best approach. And hey, just apply the knowledge